honestly, I don't even want anything. I'll just pass. I'm gonna make life easier for you. You know, we're not gonna make life easier for me, are we? How crazy would that be? Just nuts. So, just make life easier for you. I don't even want anything.
What's up, everybody? So every year after this, we have a little sit down and I kind of talk you through what was kind of behind the scenes on the song for the year, right? And this year was Chlorine. And so I knew what this one was going to be about ahead of time. I knew I wanted to do something that sort of encapsulated the history of what I had done up until this point. What I didn't know was what music to use. And I started working on that, and I knew I wanted something with a bit of a more of a bounce to it, that like kind of tempo wise, like rhythmically it was different. So usually most stuff from Burn Forward is around 80 beats per minute, and this one was around 125 beats per minute. So, and you can make the argument that 80 is 160 if you want to really dig into it, but long story short, it was faster and it had a bounce to it which allowed for a different type of pockets to kind of find verbally, so or delivery wise. So I knew I wanted to go through the history, and once I made the music, which samples Jetta's remake of I'd Love to Change the World. Somebody wrote in the comments, I know this was in a trailer somewhere. It was in the Planet of the Apes trailer. But it's like an old 60s song, late 60s, I think. And it's on brand, right? I'd love to change the world, thinking about, you know, what I'd done or how I feel about what I've done up until this point. And originally, when I approached it, I didn't necessarily think anything about tone, but as I started writing it, the tone had a tendency to get angry. And I want to go out right now and say I'm not angry at anyone, really, spoken about here. Not angry, not, you know, angry. There's things that have irritated me and still irritate me when I think about them, but not angry. So the first verse kind of starts with my introduction to all of this in terms of content, which is that I got involved with a show, a podcast. I wrote them and I asked if they would plug something that I was working on, and they did. And then before you knew it, I was on their show and we were talking. I had a great rapport relationship with them. And even now, I respect all those people involved, and I have no ill feelings towards. I don't, wish any ill upon them. I wish them the very best. Honestly, I do. But they lied to me. And I don't deal well with betrayal, if I perceive it that way anyway. And I'm sure they got a side to the story as well, But for me, it's really water under the bridge. I'm only just bringing it up because it's about the history of the song in both context and concept, but also in, literal history of working the song out. And I think as I was kind of turning that soil over in my mind, I was getting angrier, kind of thinking about it, like dwelling on it. And it ended up, the kind of stuff surrounding that ended up causing me to leave that and start Shattered Cast, which was a third-party Transformers podcast that I was part of for many years and just recently left. A lot of people misunderstand the line in there where I say, Greg T2 shattered their cast, listeners came too. Some people thought that I was saying that was a reference to when I left Shattered Cast. Absolutely not. That was in reference to all three of us were on that other show, and when we left that, we basically shattered their cast, creating Shattered Cast, and the listeners came too. Just to kind of document that piece of history, like that part of time, like that's how Shattered Cast got created. Now, the second verse goes into my reviewing stuff, and I started reviewing as a result of all of this stuff, right? Like, it was a topic that was kicked around amongst that group that I should probably start, that people might be interested in my opinions on this stuff, and a lot of that is where that comes from. So that's why the second verse starts, and I started reviewing Let's Get Down to Business. And at that time, it's different now. It's perhaps hard to imagine if you're just getting involved in this now, but at the time, the landscape of reviewing was different, and it was not necessarily easy to stumble across someone that was critical of the products. I took that to kind of be my mantle, and as a result, thought that I'd be like, yeah, look, I'm going to be critical for you, but it ended up just making a lot of people angry at me too. But a lot of people, appreciate it as well, don't get me wrong. So the second verse deals mostly with the reviewing aspect. And the first half of it is kind of about my intentions, right? That I started with these like really pure intentions, and then it transitions into this second half, and I use that part that Robert just hung this GCI Spence, like it uses that to kind of divide the line between my best intentions and then some of the things that I did that, I regret, that I have regrets about. I'm far from perfect. I have regret. There's a lot of things that I would do differently. I made every mistake you could make, but I turned down everything you would take, and there's a lot of truth to that stuff, like, that I can't always get into 100% here, but it's also a juxtaposition of kind of good and bad that comes with it, right? Robert and Jisk are two of many friends that I have made in this. Real friends, where I can call upon them for friend things, not toy things, right? And then it transitions into GCI and Spence. Some relationships that I have had that I wish had gone differently, that I feel guilty about, that had I known would have gone the way they would have, I would have made different choices. But they were my choices, right? And in painting the picture, I thought it was best and fair to show the things that have come out of this for me that have been great, and the things that have come out of this for me that I wish had gone differently. I didn't want it to be like, I did everything right, mine is picture perfect, this and everybody else has been bad around me. I wanted, like, it's a human thing. People have made mistakes with me. I have made mistakes with people. Like, it's part of it. And with the idea of chlorine, the idea of cleaning it, it was important for me to cover it all. Now, the reason why I chose chlorine while we're on that topic is because the last one, Spite, had a lot of water references. And Spite was about being critical of me. So, like, in order to clean that, chlorine, right? So, like I said, there's sometimes a little, maybe I put a little too much into it in terms of thought that perhaps is even silly to go that far, but that's how my mind works sometimes. So, to continue on, that's pretty much what that second verse is about. It's about my reviewing experiences and that I had done bad. And I said, like, I set fire to every bridge and I still double back to amend every inch. Like, which is, which can be very true for me sometimes. Moving into the third verse, I think it's kind of both about reflection and about the future, right? So when I think about why I did what I did in regards to my channel and all that, like, all of that is very true. When I think about also, like, in the same breath, people that would say that I'm self-absorbed, which I understand where that comes from, because my channel is different than perhaps another channel where the other channel is based upon the product, and my channel is really based upon me. For better or worse. It's probably also why it's not as successful as perhaps another one, right? But that is what it is. But in the same breath, I'm probably the most generous of my time of anyone that I know, which is why I start mentioning all these things, and I was able to put, Sentinel Bay in there, and the ROC interview I did, and I did an interview with Brave, just dumped that in there, like, and I'm still doing it. I'm doing something this month, Almost anytime anybody has asked me of something, I have gone to the nth degree to try to be accessible to them. So that's why, NRR with the Dolphin and Chris, Cool Table Network, Hard to Forget, all that stuff is about just giving and giving more and more stuff, more and more content, more and more of my time. But the other thing that I had to mention in there is, and I'm not going to go into too much detail here, is this thing, whatever this is, I started Nerd Rage Radio with my childhood friend, Adam. And last year, I'm not sure if it was the strain of who we had become as people, if it was the strain of the show, but whatever it was, it caused us to go our separate ways. Well, it caused him to go his separate way. And he might be trying to double back to amend every inch. He might be trying to do the same thing that I would do, perhaps if I was in his circumstance. But I want to make it clear to anybody that was in the comments, because I did see a couple that, like, I love that dude. I'll always love that dude. But our trajectories, I think, are just on different courses now. But thinking about it in relationship to the content, to relationship to the concept of the song, it very well may have been this that cost me the price of my childhood friend. I said casualty of war right afterwards. I didn't mean for that to sound callous, and sometimes I'm worried that it does. But a casualty of war is not a callous thing. That's a real thing. And then the line, I guess it was what it is a bit deeper, and I'm not going to go into that here. But that's a play on the line, it is what it is, right? But while there have been great things about all of this, there's been losses for me as well, and that's one of them. I kind of close it getting into, like, the business side of it a bit, because that's where I'm at now. I'm talking about getting older. I'm talking about thinking about my time, thinking about what I'm doing. 45, 55 splits on the tube. That's about YouTube. YouTube has given me a platform, and I'm very grateful of it. However, like, when you start thinking about sometimes the amount of work you put into something, and you're like, man, I'm only getting 55% of this. It's just like when you start working as a kid, right? And you start looking at where your taxes are going. You're like, wait a minute, why is my paycheck so light? It's it's just like there's a part of that that's wrapped up in it, you know. And then the very end, which is, you know, the if you love me, I'll love you, is, I mean, it's kind of the backbone to, it's something my dad used to say to me when I was a kid, but I mean, it's kind of the backbone to how I do business, and it's kind of the backbone to how a lot of my relationships have gone, good, bad, or indifferent. And that was basically the writing process. Once again, I went to E Black's Architect Studios in Baltimore City, recorded it. That dude is a gentleman. I highly recommend him if you're in the area. Just a king among men, that gentleman. Got it, was listening to it, and I wasn't really comfortable with it. And I did a thing on Patreon talking about it, and shout out to YK, he's nailed it. He was like, it's the change. He's like, what's making you uncomfortable? I think he said, you know, I'm paraphrasing, sonically is the change in tempo from verse to chorus, and he was spot on. That's what it was. But as soon as I acknowledged that, the more I listened to it, the more I kind of came to terms with it. So my wife loved it, which was nice to hear, and that was that. So then we started working on the video itself. Now, I knew that when I first conceptualized this, which was 2019, that I wanted it to be a history thing, and my original plan was to have a photo album and be looking through the photo album, and as I went through the pictures, they would be still frames of video that would come to life on the page. And then I would turn the page, another still frame, a picture, and that's how I would tell the whole story, because I have a ton of content from all of this, video, audio, everything, like pictures, etc., from the last 6 years of my life, and there's a lot of archive stuff to go through. But as I tried to wrap my head around doing it, I couldn't get it to work the way I wanted it to, so I had to find another way. So what I kind of substituted for it was this security cam footage, like as if something's been recording it the whole time and being able to go between stuff. So everything that you see that's on the security cam footage is all older footage, and all of the dates on the security cam footage are accurate. The times are close, but the dates are accurate. So I started kind of compiling all of that and then putting that in the video where I thought it was going to be kind of the most poignant. But then I quickly realized I needed a lot more footage. So I was thinking about where to shoot. My wife and I were talking about it, and we eventually chose the Graffiti Warehouse in Baltimore City, which, like, if you live around here, you would instantly recognize it in the video. And it's kind of like, it's almost like played out around here. Like, it's kind of lame around here. But Joe's wife, Krista, criticized me for it. But I was trying to tell her that, like, look, it's lame here, but the world doesn't know. So, and I think I was right about that, because people were like, man, very cool spot, where'd you find it? But of course I tripped over stuff in it. You know, and then when we had technical issues. Can you see me at all on that screen? Huh? It was actually my wife's idea to film into the mirror back to me. Like, you know, there's a metaphor in there somewhere. I'm sure that's not lost on you.
A little to your right. All right, let's switch sides. Come on this side. Toward me a little bit. Yeah, stay up a little closer like that.
She did a lot of the camera work there, actually all the camera work if it wasn't on a tripod. And it's also like, that's one of the reasons why the beginning of the video is all about like us setting up and getting ready, because I wanted it to almost be a linear thing about the video, right? That it mirrored itself in that way, if you will. And I was worried that I didn't have enough footage, and I didn't, so I thought, well, look, here's the other thing that we can do. I always wanted my kids involved. In the original recording of Chlorine, I say on it basically what the kids end up saying, right? Only thing we ask is don't confuse my passion for anger. But I said when I recorded, don't mistaken.
All I ask is don't mistaken my passion for anger.
But that's grammatically incorrect. And Robert D pointed it out to me pretty much immediately, so I forgot to put my kids on it. Because I'll tell you, as they get older, it just becomes more of a pain to kind of ask them to do stuff, because like, they don't want to do it, and it seems lame to them and everything else. And then as they get into it, they start to enjoy it. But sometimes it can be like pulling teeth. So I did ask them to do it. I'm glad I did. And what we shot with them was us looking at the photo album. And there's a bit to that as well if you want to dig into it. But like the very first verse is just Jaina and I. And I'm in the sweatpants, robe, slippers, t-shirt. Second verse, Jaina, Selena, and I'm in the robe, shirt, jeans now, no slippers. Third verse is all three of my kids, and I've pretty much shed the robe outfit thing. So there's like this evolution of it there with the kids each joining in one verse, and that's what I wanted that to be. And then we're still looking through the photo album, so that original concept is still there, which was important to me.
Oh wait, I'm sorry.
And then, I mean, at that point, it was pretty much done. I used some B-roll footage to like throw in to like fill gaps, and it wasn't a very labor-intensive video because of the Bud Ice virus that we had to, you couldn't really have large gatherings and organize large groups of people. So like I was on my own, and as a result, it was perhaps not as enjoyable, but it was easier. and then the very last part of it was, it's been a rough year for everybody, I think, in some regard. And in our community, we lost New York Mike, and that was rough on us. And, the Nerd Rage dynamics changing, and like it's been rough. And I kind of wanted to sanitize it, and get it all out in the open, and then start anew. And hopefully that did it. Time will tell in less than 3, they say, right? But yeah, so I'll tell you that that was it. That's Chlorine. Next year will be the last one, unless I really get a hair up my you-know-what. I got one more that I want to do, and then I plan on putting a pin in that chapter of the channel. So I hope that folks can get together at TFCon in Baltimore, because if they can't, that'll be a real bummer of a way to go out without, missing everybody and so forth. So hopefully it'll go off without a hitch. And yeah, that's it. I'm very pleasantly surprised with the feedback and all the recognition of like emotion in it, and because I think there is a lot of that in there. And next year is going to be a happier song, I promise. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.
Yeah, I'll keep it like I'm keeping your tip. I'm out of here.